G'day and welcome to The Other Side Interviews. I'm Damien Curry. There are people who sit around bitching and moaning about the way the world should be, and there are people who get off their backsides and do something about it. My guest today really falls into that latter category. His name is Graeme Haycroft. I met Graeme recently because we both now sit on the board of the Australian Institute for Progress, which is a tiny not-for-profit think tank doing its bit to promote ideas of liberalism and freedom, small government and the spirit of entrepreneurialism in Australia. Graeme is someone who's done a lot of that himself by creating what is known as the Red Union and taking on some of the most powerful and scary institutions in our country, our left-wing labour unions, by creating alternative unions of his own. Now, the Red Union has 13 unions and a formidable 17,000 members. One of their slogans is protection without the politics. Red Union promises the following: a union run by workers, not union officials, zero party politics, meaning lower fees for members, all member issues to be completed and not left unresolved, and members to receive an initial response to their issues within one business day. Graeme, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Damien. Good to be here.
That's quite a list of promises, stuff that I assume you feel that the traditional labour unions are not delivering.
Well, that's true. We actually do that stuff. I mean, they were sort of aspirations to start with, and if you set a list of goals and they're your aspirations, you end up achieving it. So,
why did you set this up? What was the motivation for you?
Well, I retired in 2012, and I had a very successful business. I actually employed over 2,000 people. It was sort of like a labour hire arrangement.
Thank you and congratulations from the people of Australia for the entrepreneurial spirit. I don't think we thank our small and medium business people enough.
But look, it was a very lucrative business. You know, I figured out a different way to do it.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial thinking, I suppose. Most people do it in most labour hire agencies doing it in a very labour-intensive bloody way. And I sort of changed all that and made up all the rules from scratch, I suppose. And it was very financially successful. I was able to retire in 2012, and my wife and I wanted to travel around a bit. And you can only do so much travelling, Damien. It's after a while, every hotel gets to be the same.
It's a bit boring. And
anyway, about 4 or 5 months later, I thought, no, I'm going to die doing this. They had plenty of money, and so I thought, well, what needs to be done really is, I looked at the union movement. I was a major foe of the AWU and the shearing industry, and we'd taken on the CFMEU in the building industry. Oh, excuse me.
Gosh, that's a tough one.
Well, we won. We set up about 10 or 12 high-rise sites on the Sunshine Coast without the CFMEU. Hadn't been done before. Hasn't been done since. It was actually, all the stuff's really simple. These cartel type arrangements are held in place by really little stuff. And I'd worked out that the CFMEU and the Master Builders Association were actually in partnership together.
Okay.
And the only way the CFMEU could ever get onto a building site was because the rules that had been set up by the Master Builders Association let them on. So, simple solution. And I was doing this in conjunction with a bloke named Ronnie Jenkins, who was a formwork contractor. I don't know whether he's still alive. Great guy, straight as a die. And we made the rules. And the rules were, you could be a member of the Master Builders Association, but you weren't allowed to use any of their documentation. You had to use ours. And we got the HIA, Housing Industry Association, to change their documentation specifically for us. And they still use it, by the way. And once you changed that changed the way people interacted on the site. It made the subcontractors responsible for the work that their workers are doing. So if their workers, for instance, we're going on strike, we have to, boss, there'd be no penalty. So we put in, well, that's okay. But the subcontractor would be paying the liquidated damages for the site that wasn't operating. Now the workers will walk off because they don't like the major contractor, but they won't send their direct boss broke.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Right. So you made it more intimate and the effects more intimate and felt.
No, I learned about rules, how important rules are in organisations and institutions. And so we succeeded at that. And I looked at, going back to your question, looked at, the union movement, and I thought, they're all charging in today's dollars about, $600 to $700 a year. And I thought, couldn't possibly cost that much to provide a union service. We now know, and we set up initially, we charged about half $350. We had to increase that because I was tossing it $100,000 a year, and I thought, this can't keep going. And so we put up the rates to $450. It made no difference to the membership levels, and it was still far enough away, still $300 away from where the unions were.
What the unions were charging, okay.
And that was a very important point. We've now got a total of 17,000 members, and we're charging $450, and it's just profitable. Because we provide the services to the unions. The unions themselves don't actually need very much money. It's the provision of services that's important. And if you've got 17,000 members, you can probably do it for 400. If you've got 40,000, you do it. There's a nurse union in Western Australia. They charge 400, but they banked $2 million last year. Do a bit of simple arithmetic. It's costing them about $350. We'd be able to do it for 300 easy. And if you got 60,000, you could probably do it for 200 to 250.
But union fees, I've seen unions with fees up to $1,000.
But take the teacher and the nurse union. They're the main ones.
And you've got alternative teacher and nursing unions.
Absolutely, yeah. So they're around the 700 mark, 650, 700 around Australia, with the exception of the West Australian one. There's a rogue union official who was running them.
Okay.
He had this curious view that if it only costs $400 to provide the service, we'll only charge 400.
Outrageous.
Well, that bloody view was not held by any other union official in the country.
Well, he can't stick around.
So here's the bottom line: the bucks. The money's huge.
Right.
We're the sixth of the size of the nurses union in Queensland, right? We spent more money in year 2022, we spent more money on legals than they did.
Right.
So they don't actually do anything.
So you're charging about $450, they're charging about $650 or $700?
$720 actually.
Okay.
$717 somebody is. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so there's a $250 gap there. What's that for?
Well, it's bigger than that. Because they've got 60,000 members, it's really only costs $200 a member to provide that service. You
reckon you could provide that service for $200?
If I was running, Jack and I were running the QNMU, we could charge $200, we'd still make a profit, and the members would get better service. So there's about $500 that's going out the window. Most of it's pissed up against the wall, if I can use that rude language, but it's just dreadfully. They've got 170 people work for them, right? Jack and I could run it with 50 or 60 people and still provide a better service. So what are the other 100 people doing? Damien, what are they doing? I can tell you what they're doing. They're not doing...
Tell us what they're doing, Graeme.
They're not doing nurse work.
Right.
They're working full time for the ALP. There's no actual money transferred from the unions to the ALP. The union view of...
There isn't? I thought the unions donated heavily to the ALP and that was all above board.
No, very, very small.
Oh, okay. It's the resources.
Yes. Their view of their Labor politicians is little different than our view of Conservative politicians, right? They're the same people. They can interchange. The skill set for a politician is, they weren't doing that, they'd be selling cars. It's the same skill set, right?
Right.
No, that's true. They're all personally very nice people, often well-meaning. They've mastered the art of the chit-chat and over coffee. They're all very interesting people, but they have the attention span of a gnat, most of them, and a week is a huge amount of time. So what happens is they direct what happens, and the politicians just told what to do. Because that's what, we're getting a bit complicated. The faction system, their income streams, they give them fancy names, centre left and left wing and all that. That's money from the United.
Oh, I see. Right.
This is the AWU stream.
A particular union gets a particular official because that's or percentage of. Yeah. Okay. So the factions are tied to the unions.
Tied to money. Right. They're the money streams.
Ah.
Right.
Okay.
So you don't want to give any. No one in their right mind is going to give a bunch of politicians money.
I can hear you there.
On any party, right?
Yeah. This is all opinion, by the way, without malice and in the public interest. But just Graham's opinion. But off we go. Yeah.
Well, I think you'd find that
There's a lot of
we would agree exactly with the registered union officials about politicians.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but we don't control them. We don't give any money to any political party. That's the difference. That's
right. Do you think Australians know that a significant proportion of their union fees is actually contributing to the ALP?
No, they don't. They think there's some sort of connection. The LNP politicians are incapable of understanding it. Right?
The Liberal Nationals, yeah. Why?
Yeah. They're innumerate mainly, I think. None of them. No, seriously, none of them have ever had been in small business. But you can count on one hand. You know, Luke Howarth.
I haven't been impressed by the talent, as people who watch this show know. I haven't been impressed by the talent in our political class in this country.
Yeah, so they don't understand how rules affect things. They don't understand institutions, and they don't understand how money works and how to apply money to get a political or a power effect. Right? They have just no idea. You know, there's probably 200 people in Australia that really understand how institutions work. Right? I'm one of them.
Okay.
What's unique about me, you could add another 2 or 3 names, Ken Phillips, my partner Jack, Matt Rowan, I've just about run out of names. But the rest of them are all on the ALP side.
Yeah, right. Okay, all right. So Conservatives, but that's...
There's 5 of us in Australia and there's 195 with the ALP.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of makes sense because people who tend to be with the ALP tend to come out of the bureaucracy, and so they have that skill set of being able to know how to manage and manipulate institutions to their own ends, or they've come out of the union movement, or they've come out of, you know, organisational structures of bureaucracy of some sort. Whereas the people on the Conservative side of politics are more entrepreneurial, business-driven.
Well, they used to be
relationship trade, or used to be.
Used to be. Yeah. Now they're not now.
Right.
And they don't. I don't know where. You know, the Stafford Group. They've actually never been in business. They just don't understand how rules affect organisations, and that's. I think I'm fairly good at that. Keeping in mind, there's 190. You know, when you say 200 people in Australia know how this works, I'm not at the top of that list. I'm probably down the bottom of the 200.
Well, teach us, Master. I mean, what are the rules that we need to understand, or the way that we need to work with rules and institutions and organisations that so many on the Conservative side or the centre-right side of politics, the Liberal side, are missing?
We'll go. Okay, it's good. Go back to that example I was talking about before on work sites. The Master Builders Association contract essentially held the subcontractor blameless if there was an industrial relations dispute. They were sort of in the same vein as acts of God.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
Now all we did was make there's a couple of 3 lines, made the subcontractor responsible for the actions of his own subbies. It's that simple. And they look the same. It's only a couple of words, but the effect is opposite.
Massive. Yeah.
And it's this effect entirely, and there's no understanding in the Conservative side of politics about centralism. You know, we'll get in and we'll change the rules. The rules have been set up over eons by bureaucrats who are experts at this.
Yes.
You've got to, and we'll talk
yes,
about
Prime Minister. Yeah. Yes, Minister.
It's where the opposite to central is local. And the Conservative side of politics has got to say, well, we can't win in the centre. We can't say we're going to control the bureaucracy better. The bureaucracy is governed by rules. And you put all the rules, it's probably about a ream of rules. Right? We're going to find a politician who would read more than 2 pages, right? Instead of 500.
And the bureaucracy feeds itself, right? The bureaucracy looks after itself, it protects itself, and it grows itself.
Well, its goal is
it's huge now.
Its goal is to grow itself. And one of the silliest things we've ever done in this country, and the worst, it's worldwide, is if you're going to run a chook raffle, who wouldn't you get to run it?
Oh, gee, I don't know, a criminal?
Or a government department?
Right.
Right? You wouldn't get a government department to
See, I
run a
never
chook
know that.
raffle.
Yep.
And yet, how about a health system? Oh, they're simple. Right?
Yeah, right.
About the same as putting a man on the moon. Let's get them off. We all agree that we wouldn't get to run a chook raffle. We'll get them to run it. And the net effect of that is, in Queensland, we've got around about, these are rough numbers, right? About 110,000 employees in Queensland Health. It's really hard to figure out. It's not
Right.
there's not one. No, there's no one bloody report. We're preparing a green paper now, trying to make some sense out. But in its broad generality, 110,000. We know there's about 40,000 nurses.
That's 3% of the 2% of the population plus.
110,000 people.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Queensland. Yeah.
but here's the thing. 110,000 people. We know there's 40,000 nurses. How many doctors and other people that touch people in hospitals, change the beds, feed them, da-da-da-da-da? Probably about 20,000. We guesstimate 2025, right? If you've got 40,000 nurses. You need doctors, wardsmen, someone's got to do the gardens and all that sort of stuff. So you're probably up to, 65, 70,000. Right? The number's 110. What are the other 40,000 doing, Damien?
What are the other 40,000 doing, Graeme?
They're shining their bums.
Yes.
And that's it. So there's about a 1-to-1 ratio
Right.
of nurses to administrators.
Bureaucrats and administrators.
Right. And
And this is not just Queensland, of course. This is probably the same all around the country. And you have
the NHS
unions all around the country.
Yeah, we're around. There's 5 separate unions, but there's state subsidiaries that we're now setting up.
So you've got nurses, teachers, doctors.
Mental block. We've got ordinary
the general
workers.
ordinary workers one for
Hang on,
everybody
there's
who
one
doesn't
missing.
fall into those categories.
Nurses, teachers, doctors. There's 5.
See what old age does.
Oh, crikey.
We'll get to it, don't worry.
We did have drivers.
I'll
and
check your
workers.
website.
Yeah, anyway, there's a lot. The red union.
Yeah. Builders? No. So, all right.
It'll come back to me. Yeah.
Just looking at the doctors, what happened to the Australian Medical Association?
Oh, very left wing. Very left wing.
Especially now, right? Yeah.
We think there's about, again, hard to work out, there's about 110,000 doctors in Australia. The AMA is now almost exclusively for specialists. There's some GPs, but most of them aren't a member of the AMA. We reckon of 110,000, there's probably about half work for the hospital system on salaries.
Right. So
half of them, so you've got 50, 60,000. The AMA's only got 25,000 members out of 110,000.
Right, okay.
They're not representative at all. But anyone with any sort of political experience and understands how institutions work can see that the plan of the federal government is to take all the state health systems, which are all creaking and groaning and falling apart, and take them into Canberra. Now, this is going to pose a huge problem politically for the LNP.
So you're talking about like a UK-style NHS system.
Yeah. Under the Australian Constitution, they can't do it, but they can because
health has to be with the states, right? In the Australian
Constitution says health, unless there is there's the foreign powers, right? You know how we adopt all these international covenants and that sort of stuff. What that
decreed by the WEF, WHO, UN.
So if you've got the WHO, and I think we've already adopted or are adopting some covenants.
Sorry, the WEF is not a. I shouldn't put them in that mix. They're just an economic forum. But anyway, you're going. WHO is a.
They're probably all mates. Yes. So these international protocols will be adapted and they'll be sorted out, and we'll adopt them. No one in the LNP will even know, even if it's presented to them, they have no idea what it means. But we'll change the effect. And the other bit of information I've got, which is a dead set giveaway, the AHPRA, which is the Australian Health Regulatory Agency, or professionals, that's where the doctors and the nurses and all the medicos get registered. And it was actually
set up total control over them all.
It was set up by the nurse unions, out of Queensland, actually. Beth Mole was the secretary, and she did a pretty good job. And the LNP even gave her an AO.
Ah,
for
there you
increasing
go.
the membership from 150,000 Australia-wide to around 450,000.
Wow.
By the virtue of centralising the structure and making it a condition of registration of a nurse that they have to have professional indemnity insurance, and the only place they can effectively get it is
APRA.
Oh no, through the unions.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So we can do it because we're now big enough. But it was a very expensive couple of first years when we did.
I'm sure.
Ouch.
Yeah, insurance is expensive, especially professional indemnity for a high-risk business like nursing. But so the APRA came out of that, are you saying? Or
APRA was created by the nurse unions, and
Right.
it's a partnership of state arrangements, but it's effectively unaccountable. Now they've just done a survey of their impact and how they're regarded by the profession and by the public, and it's really quite damning. They're not widely respected and blah blah blah. It's a real shitcad, right?
Well, they lost a bit of credibility in COVID, right?
Absolutely.
Because of the way that they were. I guess a lot of doctors felt that they were being controlled to a certain extent by APRA and the threat of deregistration if they opposed the COVID narrative.
A lot of them were deregistered on the whim of these they're faceless people. You know, I've read the transcripts and I've actually listened to one particular meeting, and the nice little APRA people, and couldn't actually see them, they would be sitting there, and you can say that I'm Rosemary and I'm George, and they don't have second names.
Ah, right.
So you're dealing with faceless people. Anyway, here's the point. When was the last time you saw a government agency everybody knock itself? Doesn't happen, does it?
Yeah, no. They usually, if they're writing a report about themselves and assessing themselves, it's going to be positive, right?
That's right, except in this case it's bad. So
they've kicked themselves up the backside.
Yeah, so it needs to be fixed.
Oh, because it needs to be fixed.
And what's the solution?
And the solution?
Oh, well, the federal government will have to take it over, won't it?
Ah, right. Okay.
So
it's a state. APRA is a collection of states.
It's a partnership of all the states.
Okay.
And even some of the conservative states even had conservative governments, and they just signed off because the LNP, the conservative politicians, have no understanding of this stuff.
Yeah.
None.
So it's clever, right? So they'll get the federal control of it by saying it isn't well run, we need the feds to step in.
So you've got the regulatory agency, probably the first step, and the second one, we need to, it's far more efficient to have it all run out of Canberra. Remember the 40,000 bureaucrats I was talking about before in Queensland? How many bureaucrats do you reckon there will be in the Queensland end of the health system when it's run out of Canberra?
The same number there are now.
No, double it.
More?
Double.
Oh, okay.
It'll be 80,000.
Fantastic. 80,000 locally and some in Canberra.
Yeah, and so there's an international comparison point. France, Ramsay Australia, a subsidiary of that, because they're worldwide now,
right.
Ramsay's, very efficient hospital running group.
Yep.
They're one of the public health providers in France. I think there's half a dozen. We're looking at that. And I spoke with Carl Monahan, who's the CEO of the Australian thing, and I was at a function, and I actually asked the question publicly, and I talked about the ratio of nurses to administrators in Queensland, which is 1 to 1. So you've got 10 nurses, you have 10 administrators, or 40,000 nurses, 40,000 administrators.
And she said?
I said, what's the ratio in France? And I said, and she didn't instant reply. She said, 10 to 1.
10 to 1?
10 nurses, 1 administrator.
Oh my God. How is their national health system not bankrupt?
No, in France, they have 10 nurses, 1 administrator.
Oh, sorry, the other way around.
1/10.
Good. Okay, right.
So that gives you some
what about
idea.
the UK?
Oh, the UK would be the other way around. You'd have 10 nurses, you'd have 20.
All right, so we want to move towards the UK system, of course, then.
Well, the federal government does. We don't.
Yeah,
We're going to fight it. Yeah.
Now, look, I want to just refer to this. You showed me this marvellous, I think we got the slide there, Aaron, but the Nurses Code of Conduct.
Oh, priceless.
This is fantastic. Can we have slide 1? It's about clinical safety as a defined standard and subject to objective assessment. Yes, cultural safety is this new thing they talk about, cultural safety. It's entirely subjective, and nurses can lose their registration on the whim of APRA complaints assessment officers. Okay, let's have a look at what it says. It says, first of all, the cultural safety concept was developed in a First Nations context and is the preferred term for nursing and midwifery. However, The presence or absence of cultural safety is determined by the recipient of care. It is not defined by the caregiver. So what does that mean? Not defined by the caregiver?
Well, the patient says, I don't think you treated me in a culturally safe way. I'm reporting you. And it's okay. So what is the, how does cultural safety compare to clinical safety? If a nurse is doing something which is clinically or professionally unsound, there's some fairly objective tests for that. And if someone is accused of that, there would need to be proof. And if the nurse is found guilty of, professional malfeasance, right, or clinical malfeasance, then they can lose their registration.
Fair enough.
But there's an objective test.
Yes.
Right? Now, what the Code of Conduct says is that cultural safety is equivalent to or equal to clinical safety.
Oh my God.
Right?
So cultural safety, this subjective thing that you can't really measure.
So some patient says, I don't like the way you did, held your mouth when you spoke to me or whatever.
Makes a complaint.
I noticed that you didn't apologise for your white privilege, right? Because that's specifically stated. I mean, I'm trying to be flippant about this, but the reality is it's a totally subjective test. The patient says, I wasn't treated with cultural safety. There is no objective assessment of that. Right. If that's the case, then this can be just stripped off.
Well, let's see what it says about cultural safety. We'll just read on a little bit now.
Yeah.
Cultural safety is a philosophy of practice that is about how a health professional does something, not just what they do. Cultural safety, so I'm imagining myself as a nurse now and I'm trying to work out how I've got to behave. Cultural safety represents a key philosophical shift from providing care regardless of difference to care that takes account of people's feelings. I can't find the last word. I've lost the last word.
I just make it up. They did.
It's on the screen. So, I mean, what does that mean? I mean, it's what are these waffle word bloody...
It means the left are about control.
Yes.
Right?
It means you don't know what it means, so I can control you.
Exactly.
It's like it can change the meaning anytime I bloody like.
It's totally subjective.
Yeah.
And, as a professional union organisation, you can't have your members subject to the proclivities and opinion of bloody bureaucrats. That's the issue.
Yeah.
They don't like you. They say, oh, you didn't treat so-and-so with cultural safety. That's indefinable. Bang, you lose your registration. And there's no appeal. You can't get back. So you've got total control.
This is how you do control. Okay, slide 3. It requires nurses to undertake an ongoing process of self-reflection and cultural self-awareness. More things you can't possibly objectively measure. And an acknowledgement of how their personal culture impacts on care. In relation to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health, cultural safety provides a decolonising model of practice. Here comes the left-wing neo-Marxist identity politics view of the world, based on dialogue, communication, power sharing and negotiation, and, here's the kicker, and the acknowledgement of white privilege. When did we decide white privilege was an official thing that goes into... I didn't know that nurses had to acknowledge their white privilege, not just to themselves, but to the patient.
Yeah. Well, that's what it says. And if you don't do it, it simply means that the regulatory authority has total control over practitioners. Nurses are subject to the total subjective whim of AHPRA, or whatever it's going to be, its replacement federal body. It'll be even worse then.
Graeme, how do you not get disillusioned and upset? I mean, just want to give up. I mean, we seem to be so far down the rabbit hole of manipulation and control by left-wing bureaucratic forces in this country that you can't move. You can't do anything without the potential for somebody to just kind of pull the rug from under you.
Well, this is 5 years ago. I saw this. Actually, one of our members picked it up, and it was interesting. They had a big spiel, I don't think it's on the website now, of how they introduced this, and it was all sort of ushered in by the nurse unions. And he analysed the way they had described it, and it was bureaucratic double, triple speak. And he said, and he gave the numbers and he broke it down, as few as 250 people in Australia actually went through the authorisation process of this new change. It looks like there were, it was all put to nurses and they all had a look at it and all said, this is a wonderful idea. In actual fact, they didn't do any of that. They set up a quite complicated process, which looks like lots of people were being involved, but they actually bloody weren't. So that's how they do it. Florence Nightingale, who was a remarkably wordy woman, by the way.
Was she?
Very wordy. Her principal code of conduct and code of ethics for nurses, which she wrote, is just a bit over half a page, A4.
Right.
And I reckon it could be written in half the number of words. You had a look at that document.
Oh,
it's 30 pages, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's a lovely
And it's impenetrable.
tome of garbage.
Oh, it's impenetrable bullshit. It really is.
So, okay.
What else could you
so
say?
we've got to get smart, right? On the other side, we've got to be a bit smarter about how we handle this stuff and play the game back at them.
Well, you've got to. Probably what's more important is where are you going to fight them? Not so much the fight. You can't win centrally. Anyone that says, I'll change the code of conduct, zero chance. The bureaucrats will just fog up the process.
So don't play on their turf. Don't meet them on their battleground.
You can never win. Once you accept your opponent's starting assumptions on anything, you can only ever come second.
Right.
All right? No, we've got to go, this is central control writ large. It's apartheid, really. The only way to change that is you've got to go out to the outside and underneath and start having the decisions made away from the centre. And the interesting thing about this is it's popular. People, in Cairns would much rather their hospital run by people in Cairns.
Of course.
They don't want it run in Brisbane.
No.
And they know.
Okay, so this is interesting because it really speaks to why conservatism is the populist politics now, right? People want Trumps. They want people who are going to rock the bureaucracy, are going to change things. And it really comes from that grassroots up, local, not centralised approach.
Yeah, in America, the Tea Party movement.
Yes.
Which was a hodgepodge. But it changed the culture. The local people said, we're sick of these rhinos, was the term, Republicans in name only.
Right, yeah.
They're going to start influencing the primaries.
Boy, we've got a Liberal Party full of linos. There's no question.
Yeah, and there's no way that you can change the LNP. I mean,
they're bureaucrats in another way, right? That culture is now...
The LNP is the bureaucratic B team. Labor's the bureaucratic A team.
Yeah, they're just not very good at it, but they are...
Well, they want to turn every 12 years, right? Christopher Furley, if he stumbles over the line, I don't think he will.
The opposition leader in Queensland, yep.
He's got... What are they...
Sorry, you don't think he will stumble over the line? You think he'll win famously, or you'll think he'll lose?
He might stumble over the line. I doubt it.
You actually think he will lose, even with this, the unpopularity of Anastasia Palaszczuk and the current Labor government? I mean, she won't be there. But
yeah, that's right. But what's the alternative? What's your plan, Mr. Christofouli? Well, his plan is to be Premier, but what are you going to do for us when you're Premier? No answer. We have...
Well, he's laid out a few things, I mean, but it's hard to define those things. It's hard to get clear on what they are. It's a bit waffly, yeah.
I mean, how are they going to deal with the fact that the health system, which they're banking on the fact that the health system is so bad that anybody would be better than Palaszczuk. Would Albanese be worse than Palaszczuk? If you've got huge... No, this is the solution, Damien. We need to centralise it because we all know that's more efficient, right? And everyone will say, and what's the LNP position on that? They've lost already.
We'll centralise it too.
We'll centralise it better.
Better.
That's right.
We'll do the voice better. We'll have more.
We'll do the Aboriginal reparations and
we'll show you. We'll show the left. We'll become them and we'll do them better.
Not one LNP politician spoke against it, voted against it. They all agreed to it, where we're going to hand out billions of dollars to the Aboriginals, controlled by the bureaucratic Aboriginal left. And the huge opposition, I believe, at the LNP convention, the fury, the core are furious. And Christopher's
furious
response...
but gutless, I might say. And I say that with all due respect to the people that give a lot of their time to that party, but it really is time to push the needle a little bit, and there's a little bit too much nodding that goes on inside that organisation. A lot of people who want to have a career, you know, and that sort of thing in politics, and they're happy to not rock the boat.
It's 200. Most of them would not earn. They get about 200, 250 grand in that sort of order, because a lot of it's tax-free.
To be an MP, you mean? To be a member of Parliament or an opposition, even in opposition?
There's probably less than half a dozen in the Queensland Parliament that could earn that much outside.
Yeah.
This is the best job they're ever going to have.
Right, I see. Yeah. Okay.
So I was going to make a point about, Christopher's response. What he should have done was, hang on, we made a big mistake here. You know, we're not going to do that. No, his response was, I think it's just unbelievable. He said, if we get in, we won't do it very well.
Okay, I must have missed that one. I must dig that out.
We're not going to push it hard.
Right.
They voted for it. They will inherit it because it's already passed. Right. They will inherit the system, and their solution is, we won't push it hard. So,
yeah, it's the same strategy.
Where do you go with that?
Same strategy that works so well for the LNP in Western Australia, in Victoria, in New South Wales. How many times do you have to get the lesson, boys and girls? But anyway. They do have to play to the centre, though, because they're a major party. It is difficult in Australia these days because the problem is cultural. You know, the left have control of our institutions. They've got control of our education system. They've got control of our, obviously, the union system, and even corporate world now with their HR and PR and marketing infiltration. They're everywhere you turn. Yeah, and it's very hard to stand up to it all.
If you're in a debate, right, and
as you can see, my ABC career is terrific. You know?
Well, if you're in a debate, I used to be in JCs. I wasn't a particularly good orator, but I was the number 3 in the debating team.
Yeah.
We only lost once. We shouldn't have lost. As I remember, I loved doing it. The principles of debating are very simple. You know, you've got to be opposite.
Yeah.
Right. The judges and the people will decide, bring it into the middle. The people do the compromising. The problem with our conservative politicians is, instead of being advocates, they want to be judges.
Right.
So the judge sits in the middle. Their job is to sit on the right, and the further out to the right you go, the more you're going to drag the centre across.
Right.
That's the rules of debate.
Okay.
Politics is just about debate. And if the left are over here, you don't go over there, 1 millimetre away. You're over here. In fact, if they go even left, you go over there further. Right?
But you won't win if you do that, Graeme.
Well, you do. You do win.
And that's what the populism has proven.
That's right.
Because you stand for something, because you've got a brand identity, because you've got something to say, here's what you can buy, here's what we stand for. I might not agree with everything that you say, but I know what I'm buying. I know the product I'm getting.
And all issues aren't equal in terms of intensity or emotive effect. They're not all the same. Some things are far more important than others in people's minds. So it's a bit more complicated than just be over here.
But what would you do on climate, for example, if you believe that let's just say that you believe that climate was a conspiracy of not a conspiracy that's controlled, but a general conspiracy of consensus, if you like, everybody just agreeing with the current thing, and it's not really as dangerous as we think. There's a bit of climate change, right? Okay, let's say that's your view, right? You go out and you think, well, I'm going to be a politician, and I'm going to go out and say, well, we shouldn't be destroying the Australian coal industry because we can't afford it. It's not going to have any actual tangible impact on global climate change. And you go out and say that, and then the left say, you're a climate denier, right? And they throw the rhetoric at you, and they call you names, and then all of a sudden you're tagged with this, here I am, Mr. Politician, trying to become the new Liberal Premier of Queensland, or whatever state.
Well, and there's a tricky one now, because everyone gave up. I was a science teacher for a while, so I understand the science. And it's not hard. Where is the evidence in history that warm is bad? Where?
Well, very warm is bad, isn't it?
Where's the evidence? We've been going for millions of years, and we've got the geophysical record. We know what's happened. When was it bad? I tell you, when we do know it was bad, They were called ice ages are bad. Right. Cold is bad. Nothing grows when it's cold. It's bad.
Yeah, well, we've got the greening of the planet due to carbon.
Well, the greening is...
that's happening, so that's good.
Carbon dioxide dissolves in water. Here's the bloody simple science of it, right? And if it's warmer, more water evaporates from the ocean. Where do you think rain comes from? It evaporates from the ocean, gets blown over the mountains, and then it gets pushed up, it gets cooler, drops down.
Can we not talk about climate change? It's my least favourite subject, and it'll take us hours. No, I'm just kidding. We'll get you on to have a chat. We'll do a panel on climate change one day. Yeah. But I just want to talk about what you do as a politician when you're faced with one of these issues, and you think, okay, if I go out to the public and I take a stand on this and say, well, we're not... I mean, I could design messaging for Chris Afuli or someone like that to say, you know, I strongly believe in the coal industry and the fact that we can't do anything in Australia. It's not going to have any effect. Therefore, we shouldn't destroy ourselves and shoot ourselves in the foot and weaken our country, weaken our security, raise our energy prices. But, you know, climate change, I'm not going to deny it. You know, it's probably real. We don't know. Maybe there's not enough science. But we're not doing anything about it because we can't. Right? And sell that message, but be strong about it.
Well, you've got to be strong about anything you do.
But they won't. They read the research. They read the research and they respond to the research, the market research, the ScoMo from marketing principle, right? Scotty from marketing. Let's read the research. The research says, I can't say this, I can't say that, I can't do this, I can't do that. And then they try to not do anything. They don't lead.
You've accepted your opponent's fundamental starting assumptions.
Yes.
You can never win.
Right. Okay, that's the principle, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. If you accept the starting assumptions of your opponent, you will never win.
You can only ever come second.
Right.
And where this has been done most effectively is in industrial relations. Right? The fundamental assumption, which is an outright lie, is that the money that people earn isn't actually theirs. There's rules that apply to it. You can't just get money. You've got to put so much money. You must have some money put aside so you can go on holidays. But shouldn't we ask the people whether they want
No, goodness no.
You know, and they've managed to turn it around so somehow or other the world started with permanent employment, and this thing called casual employment sort of popped along later, where you pay people more because they don't have continuity of income. No, it started the other way around. Started with like what we call casual employment, pay people on a daily rate. Permanent employment is where the worker concedes some income in return for continuity of work.
Yes.
And that number is clearly defined, it's 10%. There's a 10% discount for having permanent work. And so that's why people who are on permanent casual are actually 10% better off. Why would you want to change that? Or why wouldn't? So the fundamental assumption is all the LNP politicians are arguing about whether it's good or not. The real issue is who should be deciding. Should a government decide, a union official decide, or maybe the worker should decide how they want to get paid? Do they want money put into their superannuation fund?
Or not.
Or not. It's their money, they've earned it. Right?
I'd like a bit more decision about how much tax we pay too. That'd be nice.
Well,
do I want to pay for the ABC or not? No, I don't want to pay for the ABC. In fact, I want some of that $1.2 billion to keep this show going.
Well, I mean, the only way you're ever going to get rid of the ABC or fix it, because there's no politician anywhere on either party that's ever going to get rid of it. The only way you can do it, I think, is give it to them. Give it to the staff.
Right.
Where's the camera? I'll even talk to them. I'll even help them set up a workers' collective to run it.
Right.
Wouldn't that be fun to watch?
That would be great. That would be great. I'd love to see Pats Carvelis having to actually be responsible for her own results and finances.
All of those extracurricular activity, all those boards and little teams advising on sort of cultural advantage or disadvantage and stuff. Even if you are someone like what is it, Patricia Carvelis? I mean, I don't know what's the ABC like most people. But even if you are someone like that, they've all got hip pocket nerves. Yeah. And if they're running the show, they would be gone. And
none of them want to hand over their six-figure salaries at all.
Anyway, but that's the only way it's ever going to happen.
Yeah.
How could the ABC argue against that?
Well, I don't know. They probably
They say,
couldn't. I thought about
well,
maybe
we
using...
can't run it. We said, yes, you can.
I thought about using the ACCC and anti-monopoly laws against them because they've got a monopoly on non-commercial content. We can't compete because we have to run ads. Right, it's an unfair playing field. It's not. It's anti-competitive. Right, there's an argument.
That's it. But who's going to do anything about it? The only way you're ever going to do it, give it to them. Give it to them.
Yes.
That saves us $2 billion.
Right.
The taxpayer. Win, 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 win. I don't care what they do with it. You don't give them the real estate. They can do commercial renting. Government can be a landlord.
The real estate.
And they're a lousy landlord. You just sell it all off. You'd sell off the real estate.
Yep.
But you wouldn't do it straight away. And all the equipment, I mean, that's a life, it's only 5 or 10 year life, so what are you really giving away?
Not much.
Not much at all.
Just the license and
they get the license and the way, you know, the bandwidth, but that's no longer applies. I mean, this is a website, isn't it?
Well, look, I mean, we live in a different world now. We live in a world with the internet, and you don't need to listen to the ABC to get your market prices that you would have done if you were a country person in the old days, or you know, maybe emergency services. We could fire up one radio. We could have one radio channel nationally for emergencies and make sure that that's good to go when necessary, but really.
But you could set that up. You could set that up by agreement between the existing players, and they could all agree to. We'll provide in this area here, and
Commercial Radio Association could do it or something like that.
Really
anyway,
easy.
We've solved that problem. We've fixed the ABC
Any
once and for all.
we need to fix, or the ABC's gone.
So I've got one principle out of you so far. What other principles of life would you share with people who are trying to fight the system to a certain extent?
Well, we've got to go local. And that's only, and we've had a look at, you know, nurses are going to be better off running the hospitals because there's 40,000, just in Queensland alone, right? There's 40,000 bureaucrats. We need about 4,000 really to run it, okay? You do need some administrators.
Of course.
So you've got 35,000 people that, you know, they can go and do something else with their lives, right?
Something productive.
There's a huge, you can literally pay nurses 25% more, right? The most important thing that I would suggest for nurses is get rid of nurses live about 10 years less than us because of the shift work.
Oh my
They're
God.
constantly jet lagged, right?
I know that. I did breakfast radio for 7 years. I know exactly what you mean. It takes a toll on you.
Well, what an even worse toll is doing breakfast radio, then doing afternoon radio, and then doing the swing shift, right?
Which is what I did, yeah.
Try that.
I did. It's
horrible. It kills you. So nurses die about 10 years younger than everybody else as a result of that. We don't need to. The swing, there's old radio talk. See, I was in radio. My father was a radio announcer.
Was he?
Yeah, but 3-year-old Warrigal didn't have a swing shift, but 3AK Melbourne did when I was working for him in the office. So the swing shift in the hospital, which is the midnight to dawn.
Yep.
I reckon you've got to pay somewhere between 1.5 to 2 times. And the people then stay on that shift for sort of 6 months minimum. You wouldn't have
so their body adjusts and the health impacts
they have perfectly healthy lives. And the other nurses don't have to do shift work. They live 10 years longer.
Yep.
It wouldn't have to pay them another cent. But we're in the looking after the nurses business. We'll get the nurses the maximum amount of money. Same with schools. I was a teacher for a while. Teaching's a fundamentally simple thing. You know, when I was teaching in Hampton Elwood High School in the 1960s, a long time ago, there was nothing done outside of the school. Paychecks arrived by cheque. That was it. Nothing else was done outside the school. And you don't need it. And the American charter and independent school movement show you don't get sort of like a 20% better return effectiveness of teaching and education. It's like 2, 3, 4 times better.
Wow.
And so
our current system's failing in education. I've often said just give everybody a voucher, give parents a voucher for each kid.
Now you're talking my language.
And then have a free market of schools. And then the bad teachers will get laid off and paid less, and the good teachers will get promoted and paid more. The good schools will get, people will want to go to them. There'll be competition, and you'll build a good market for quality education, and that will lift And have your safety net. You can have your safety net schools, and you can make sure they're good quality too if you want, but you're going to get better quality that will lift everybody in the quality and standards if you have some competition.
Well,
because a lot of bad teachers, that are riding the system, and there's a lot of good teachers who aren't getting what they deserve, getting what they should get for being good teachers.
It's the rotten apple thing in the barrel. If you've got one rotten apple, it actually affects everybody, right? Because you can't get rid of it. Everyone else says, "Oh, why should we bother? Brown's bloody useless," or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's where the policy, if you like, of our teachers' union. We're after that 10-15% of teachers who want to teach in the charter and independent school movement, because we can pay more, pay 25% more again, because the ratio of administrators or bureaucrats to teachers is about 2 teachers, 1 bureaucrat. It's not as bad as nursing, but if you've got 100 teachers at a school, you wouldn't need 10 administrators. You've got 500 teachers in the school, you wouldn't need 50 administrators.
So a second principle I'm getting from you is maybe we need to think about ways to use the inefficiencies of the current systems and approaches against them, in a sense.
Well, I understand.
Showing that we can take that inefficiency and take that extra capital, extra money, and give it back to people, and therefore get that grassroots support. Right?
Yeah, well, the grassroots, look, the people who should be electing the school boards are the parents of the students at that school. Right?
Yes.
No one else.
Yes.
That's it. So when your kids
the client, heaven forbid, the client in control. Goodness me.
And you don't have those curriculums. Curriculums are a dime a dozen, right? And I don't mean that in a demeaning way. It's just not that complicated. You could take 10 or 12 teachers as a group from anywhere and say, righto, come up with a curriculum, please, and next week they'll do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then if it's lousy, people will go to another school.
Correct.
Currently, we've got a lousy system we can't get away from. Graeme, my father was an educator, my late father. He was a great educator and very senior in the education department in Queensland, inspector of schools in special education. And his focus was constantly on the client. And he would always say, you've got to be focused on the client. There are not too many bureaucrats like that.
Not wrong.
And that was his agenda. And he came up against all sorts of problems with every organisational structure and everything. I'm a bit of a chip off the old block when it comes to being a bit of a someone who likes to shake things up and make them more efficient. But, he always said, your schools must be run for the parents and the children, not for the teachers and the bureaucrats.
He wouldn't be
and that
there
made him
now.
incredibly unpopular.
He wouldn't even be there now.
Right. Yeah, he retired probably 30, 40 years ago now.
Anybody that has the same
90s,
same mindset as him, and there are a lot of people,
yeah,
they wouldn't even get on the ladder.
Yeah.
They'd be wiped out in the second year. Watch out for the bloody Curry guy.
Yeah.
He's a...
I can relate to that. Graeme, how do people get in touch? Or I suppose they just go online, look up Red Union.
Yeah.
Why'd you call it Red Union? It's got a real commie ring to it. You're being a bit ironic and sarcastic there, are you? You don't strike me as somebody who likes to take the mickey and have a bit of a joke.
Where the red stuff came from was that if you want to have brochures, all the leading companies in the world, what's their key colour?
Yes, red and yellow are the retail colours.
Red.
Yeah.
Talk to any woman, what colours do you want to wear if you want to stand out? Black, white, red.
Do you know what the colour of credibility is for news sets?
Red?
The colour of credibility? It's
blue.
Yes.
Okay, right. Anyway, so
every news set is blue.
So we did that, and what we found was that none of the unions use red because that's the colour of the ALP. So we just grabbed it.
Right. Oh, there you go.
And it's sort of, it's come into the vernacular now. People just call it, not red unions, just call it Red Union. It's a group of 5 unions.
Yeah.
That's as simple as that.
Well, good on you, and every success. And I hope it prospers. We'll have you back on the show again sometime soon. It's been an absolute pleasure and very entertaining talking to you, Graeme. Enjoyed it thoroughly.
It's a pleasure to be here, mate.
Good on you. All right, well, that's it for the Other Side interviews for this week. And don't forget to watch the show on our independent ADH TV platform. It is totally free. and you don't even have to sign in if you don't want to. It's a lot easier than you think. There's nothing to download if you don't want to. Simply go to any web browser and just type in adh.tv. That's it, adh.tv, and bingo, you're there for free. You'll see all the tiles for all the different ADH shows like Mark Stein, Alan Jones, Nick Cater, Fred Paul, Alexandra Marshall, Daisy Cousins, they're all there, just like a Netflix or Stan type interface. And of course, our show, The Other Side Australia, every Friday night we put up a new episode, which you can watch at any time, and The Other Side interviews every Tuesday night. So we have two separate tiles for our show, so one for the interview show and one for the regular one. All past episodes are there on demand for you to watch anytime you like for free. As I said, the two different programs have got their own tiles. And we have new episodes out every week. The Other Side Australia streams Friday nights at 8, and The Other Side interviews first streams Tuesday nights at 6. Now, if you want to get really clever, you can download the ADH TV app from the Google Play or the Apple App Store on your phone or smart device, or even better, download the app on your smart TV and put it on your homepage of your TV once and for all, and you'll always have it at the press of a button. Simple. Did I mention it's totally free? Just a couple of ads to watch to help us pay the bills at the start. Thanks very much for supporting the alternative media, and we will catch you next time.